Okay, so if I only had 30 seconds to offer you my best lighting tip, it would be this. The easiest and quickest way to get cinematic lighting is to motivate your studio lighting. Here's how you do it. All you would have to do is identify any light that's naturally spilling within the room, like this window. Then just set your studio lighting at the same color temperature and the same direction as the window light onto your subject, and boom, you have what's called motivated lighting. And another pro tip to kind of add with this is to shoot on the shadow side. And that's because it's gonna add a lot of depth to a 2D image. Now, I was able to explain that technique to you in 30 seconds, but it's actually something that took me too many years to figure out. In fact, there are many things that I had to learn the hard way throughout my filmmaking career, so I thought I would distill all of that into 3 simple tips that you could use to elevate your films and videos right away. Now, this one tip will elevate your films, but I have 2 more that are just as simple and extremely effective. So if you're looking to elevate the lighting in your films, or you're just curious about how I light my films and videos, then this video is for you. So let's get into it, friends. Hey, what's happening? My name is Ryan, and if you're new with us, welcome. I truly appreciate you being here. Now, for this next tip, I kind of have a lot to say, but I promise I'll keep it simple methods that you could utilize right away. And that next tip is how to utilize natural light. Now, I get it. This one's super easy. You just take your camera outside and start recording. Although that does work in most cases, what if I told you that there is a way to shape that sunlight within your scene? But not only that, it's actually super simple and it will elevate your scenes to a whole new level. One way to do this is just to schedule your shoot for the best time of day. For example, sunrise or sunset, blue hour, or filming on a cloudy day. All 3 of these options are effective because they will diffuse the sunlight naturally, making this a very simple way to get a very pleasing look. Another simple method is just to shape your sunlight with diffusion, lifting shadows, or adding more shadows into the scene. Adding diffusion softens your light, kind of like this. This image is pretty gross, so I added diffusion and voila, much better. Okay, so a couple things to note when you're doing something like this. First off, you can shape this a little bit more if you wanted to. You could bring in some negative fill or some kind of black material to add more shadows, kind of like I did in this scene here. Or you could just use a bounce card or some kind of white material like I'm using here and just reflect that sunlight off the bounce card, off of that white material, so that reflects right back onto the shadow side, lifting those shadows so you have some room to manipulate the image and really shape this sunlight. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm holding, it's just a leather coaster. So anyway, there it is. But another really creative way to utilize natural light is to film by a window. And the reason is because this is what we would see with our own eyes. It's also how film stock processes light, but a lot of digital cameras will have a hard time working all that out. So this makes for a really cool cinematic look. Not like what I'm doing here. This window is blown out because I don't have any additional lighting, but let's hop over to a scene I filmed earlier so I could show you what I mean. Well, it all starts with exposing for your window light, which basically means your window isn't just white, but it looks natural. So in order to expose for my window light, I like to personally use a variable ND filter where I can easily adjust my exposure. Then I'll just set up a key light to light up my subject. And again, like we had talked about before, I will motivate this lighting to match the same color temperature as outside and the same direction. It's simple, it's clean, and it looks great. There's just one thing, and this might just be a nitpicky kind of thing for me personally, but because we're competing with the sunlight, it does take a fairly powerful light to make this work. I will typically use a 300 watt or a 500 watt. However, it does depend on the time of day. Like as for example, right now, it is at the end of the day, it's evening and it's also cloudy outside. So all of my lighting outside is diffused. So I'm not really competing with the sun as much and I'm able to just use a 200 watt light. I'm using the G200 by Zhiyun. I really like this light. It works really well for this scene, but typically it's gonna take a fairly powerful light to make this happen. And also because we are exposing for the window light, it's gonna make the rest of the room feel kind of dark, kind of like in this scene or in this scene here. Now you could fill these shadows in with some additional lighting, but then you have to bring in more additional lighting, and we're trying to keep this as simple as possible. So how do we get back to making this easy? Well, there are 2 ways that I like to do this. Number 1 is to simply just add shears to your window. This not only will diffuse the light and make it to where you won't have to expose for the window, you could just expose for the natural light that's filling in the room, but it also practically makes sense for the scene. So it's not only easier, but it also looks natural and adds to the scene. But an even simpler option I'll do is just to simply avoid the window altogether, or only show a small sliver of it like I'm doing in this scene. But what do you do if you want to film indoors? You have the perfect spot, but it's too dark and you don't have any natural light to motivate your studio lighting. What do you do? Well, when I find myself in these situations, I'll usually just add my own, which brings us to our third tip, and that is to utilize practical lights. Practical lights are any kind of light source added to the frame that would not only complement the scene, but it also makes sense for the scene and fits within the environment naturally. And that would just be something like this lamp I have behind me in this frame. But other examples of practical lights could be floor lamps, candlelight, market lights, any kind of flame or fire, like a fire pit or something like that. Or you could even get creative and do something like I did in this scene. The number one goal with this technique is context. It has to make sense. The more natural your scene and lighting looks, the less the viewer has to think about it, which allows more focus on the value of the content, and it actually adds to their experience. It's kind of like what I'm doing here in this scene. I have these two practical lights behind me, and we can call them that because one, we added them to the scene to justify our studio lighting, but also because they work really well in terms of context. Because in the scene, we are in a studio, maybe a film studio or photography studio, and our subject, our character, is working on a camera build. But let's have a seat over here on the desk so that I could break this all down and show you what I mean. By the way, sorry about the microphone. I didn't feel like setting up the whole thing, so here we are. Anyway, I have this warmer practical light right behind me, and I also added in this cooler practical light. And all I'm doing is using my key light right in front of me. This is just the Moelis B300. You don't need anything that bright though. You could just use a 200 or a 100 or even a 60 watt light would work just as well. I think this is at 4%, I believe, and it's doing a great job, but it's on the same side as this practical light behind me, and it's the same color temperature to kind of give the illusion as if that is what's lighting the scene. The other thing that I'm doing for this warmer practical light is I have a 100 watt light here. This is the C100 by Zhiyun. I have that set to the same color temperature and the same direction as well as the warmer practical light. Kind of the same thing as what I'm doing over here, but with a warmer color temperature. And that's just shining right here on my face to give me a little bit of a hair light and separate me from the background. Now this actually works really great, but if you wanted to take it a step further, because I don't have any windows in this shop in my studio, I decided to create something that looked like I did. So all I did was take a piece of cardboard and cut out these little slits, and then I took the Zhiyun X60, just a little 60 watt light, to shine that through this cardboard to create the illusion as if there are blinds, window blinds and window light coming into the room. Not only does this look really great for a scene in one of your films, but this could also work really great as a talking head setup. And all it is just a few lights and a little bit of motivated lighting. Now, I wanted to show you a full setup like this so that you could see motivated lighting with just a few lights and practical lights. But what if we wanted to simplify this even more? Let's just say you only have one studio light. Well, all you would need to do is find a window in your house or your room and use that as your key light. If it's too bright or it's high noon, you have harsh lighting coming in through that window, all you have to do is just use a white sheet or some kind of white fabric to diffuse that light, or you could just use the shadow side of your house and this should diffuse the light just as well. Or like we said before, you can just time it at a certain time of day, like golden hour, blue hour, or on a cloudy day. All of these are gonna be great options when using the window as your key light. And then all you have to do is just take your one studio light and use it just like I am here, setting it at the same color temperature and angling it at the same direction as the warmer practical light right behind me. And it's as simple as that. You don't need to add the fake blinds that are behind me right now. You could even just frame your shot to face towards some real blinds that you have in your house that are giving off the same effect, but you don't really need it. This could still look really great without it. All the different techniques that we learned in this video are truly simple but powerful ways to elevate your films and your videos. But the best way to learn anything is by doing. So I just want to encourage you to take all the techniques that you learned in this video and just get out there and make your film, because you've got this, friend. Well, that's gonna do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you liked this video or you learned something, please click the like button down below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers, friend.